Hey everyone, welcome back. You know how sometimes you see a picture and it kind of stops you in your tracks, right?
Mm.
Well, today we're diving deep into some pretty striking images that came out recently from Fox News.
Mm.
Yeah, they show ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement,
Hmm.
in the middle of these mass deportation efforts.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they're specifically going after MS-13 gang members and uh, and murder suspects. Pretty heavy stuff.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah. So I thought it'd be really, really interesting to break this down with you, see what we can learn about what's going on here, what it means, that kind of thing.
Sure, yeah.
Just from looking at these pictures, they're pretty intense, right? I mean, you see like the faces of the people being arrested, the ICE agents, doing their thing. It's a lot to take in.
Hmm.
What do you think about the impact these visuals have, especially when we're talking about something as charged and often like abstract as immigration?
Well, you're definitely right about the impact of those images. They have a way of cutting through all the noise and really bringing this issue to life. It's one thing to talk about statistics and policies, but to actually see the faces, the human beings caught up in this, it kind of forces you to confront the reality of it all, on a gut level.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's like, it's not just numbers and laws anymore. It's real people, real lives being affected, right?
Mm.
Makes you wonder about their stories, where they come from, what's going to happen to them.
Right, exactly. And I think it also highlights just how complex IC's job really is. I mean, they've got to enforce these immigration laws, but they also have to operate within legal limits,
Right.
right? And be sensitive to all these different communities. It's a tough balancing act for sure.
Yeah, no kidding. And speaking of tough, let's talk about MS-13 for a second.
Yeah.
These guys, I mean, their reputation is for violence is pretty scary.
Yeah, no doubt about it. MS-13, also known as Mara Salvatrucha, they're a really well organized and ruthless criminal organization. What's kind of interesting is they didn't actually start out as like this one big gang. You know what I mean? They came about back in the 80s with Salvadoran refugees in Los Angeles, but since then they've spread all over the U.S. and down into Central America too.
Wow, so they've really grown then.
Yeah.
So these arrests, I mean, if they're taking down all these MS-13 members, what kind of impact do you think that'll have on their operations, like both right away and then maybe further down the line?
Well, it stands to reason that when you take out a lot of members, especially if some of them are higher up, it's going to disrupt things, at least for a while, right? And it
Mm.
might make it harder for them to recruit new people too, if potential recruits see that it's getting riskier.
Like,
But the long-term effects, that's a little harder to say. MS-13, they've proven that they can bounce back, They've adapted to crackdowns before, and sometimes they even use them to their advantage to tighten their grip on things. So it's possible these arrests could actually cause some infighting, power struggles within the gang, or even spark some kind of like retaliatory violence.
oh yeah, that's a scary thought. So it's almost like, are we seeing a turning point here, or is this just another chapter in this whole saga? You know what I mean?
Exactly. And it raises another big question, too. What happens to all these people they've arrested? It's not like deportation is a simple process. There's legal stuff, international agreements, and you got to consider the humanitarian side of things, too.
Right, right. And you can't talk about this without bringing up the whole debate about immigration enforcement in general. It's a hot button issue, and these images they kind of add fuel to the fire, don't they?
Yeah, I think they do. They really put a spotlight on certain parts of the debate. For some people, seeing these pictures might strengthen their belief that we need tougher border security, that we need to crack down on criminals, that kind of thing. But for others, it might raise concerns about, due process, the possibility of racial profiling, and what this means for immigrant communities as a whole.
Yeah, it's complicated stuff, that's for sure. The more we look at this, the more layers there seem to be. So so where do we go from here? What are some key things you'd want listeners to take away from this deep dive?
Well, I hope we've at least shown that there's a human side to all of this. Those images are powerful, but they only show us a small piece of the picture. And I think it's really important to understand, like, who MS-13 is, where they came from, how they operate, if we're going to have a real conversation about this.
Right.
And lastly, I think we need to approach this issue, like so many others, with a willingness to listen to different points of view, to grapple with the complexity of it.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a fascinating look into a world that most of us, only get glimpses of. And as always, the learning doesn't stop here. Keep digging, keep asking questions. There's always more to discover.
That's the truth.
Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.